Good evening, Peter.
How are you doing? You all right?
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. So, first week back at work, or first couple of days back at work, properly in the dealerships. How's it been for you?
Interesting. I think there's an interesting mood in the camp in terms of people coming back. So we brought people back on Friday as a training day. And so that worked very well in terms of acclimatizing back to work. People getting used to the health and safety rules. They all did a health and safety online test before they came in. If they hadn't quite done it before they came in, they did it before they went home. We did a training session which we pre-recorded on the new sales process, pre-recorded one on the after-sales processes, and then we did something called Max Acts. So we reminded every colleague of what the urgent and important was about every job in the company on a day, a week, and a month. So if people forgot what the urgent and important was about the job, we gave them Max Acts sheet and talked them through what day, week, and a month what their job was, and just to make sure that we all knew the role we all had to play. And then we had an after-sales conference and a sales conference, which we did as a full group. And then we did an admin and accounts conference as well. So they were all hosted over the Friday in different groups. So by the end of it, I think we got over the first day of work thing without seeing any guests, which meant coming on Monday, people were, we hope, would be more likely to, be comfortable. And of course, Monday was very busy with guests coming in. So we're still on 80% hours. Most colleagues in the business are on equivalent of a 4-day week. And that's our way of dealing with the level of demand. And fortunately, to the credit of all the guys and girls in the business, they've all been very gracious about that and all said, we'd rather work that than make redundancies to make sure my friend and colleague in the business keeps their job as well as me. We'll do that for as long as needed. And I've got such admiration for them because that's what the team at Peers decided to do for one another rather than do redundancies. I think that's amazing.
Peter, it must have been quite frustrating looking on over the border at seeing dealers open. I mean, you've been shut now for, 14 weeks, am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, was it quite painful looking over at your colleagues in England and seeing them open and getting back to work and knowing that you couldn't do that?
It's funny, the mind. I don't know what you've been like in terms of getting yourself in the right mindset about, was a lady who worked for us for a while called Anita Douglas, and she was talking about resetting your mindset. And so all the way through this, I tried to only fret about things I can do something about and not fret about things I can't. So we've just kept a kind of positive mental attitude about whatever the scenario would be. And like most groups, we've had a plan A and a plan B. So plan A is if we stay in quarantine, plan B is if we open. So we just shifted the dates really. And I think everyone was surprised how positive we were about it. But what we've been trying to master in the lockdown is how to use the online sales product from Silver Bullet and what that sales process is, how well you can do it and how well you can do sell and deliver. So actually, we bought ourselves a couple more weeks, which in hindsight was quite good because we hadn't finished off writing out the process and writing out the sales process and what the KPIs would be. And so in the month of June, without being open, we'll have made profit in the month of June, with the workshop being much less than I think some of the other guys in Scotland, because we were worried about bringing colleagues in and breaking the rules. Well, I think some workshops extended what they believed the grey area of key working cars were. We were pretty strict actually and didn't want to break the rule. So workshops were quite quiet for us. But we got out of, we did about 1,000 cars sold and delivered in June, which is the equivalent of £1 million. So we made money in June. So we weren't as frustrated as we could have been because we weren't losing money. And yeah, I think we had a bit of preparation still to do, which we've now done. And I think we've opened better because of it.
So that I'm taking that was done via click and collect deliveries to 1,000 people. I mean, so has this changed your mindset, Peter, going forward now? Have you seen? I mean, I know you've been a big supporter of online car sales for a long time, but I mean, is this absolutely accelerating the change in your business now towards online?
I don't want to sound smug and say I knew what was coming with the kind of digital thing, but I had seen enough businesses around that had kind of given me a proper bash on the head, thinking, well, I'm it's my business, our family business. I'm trying to work out what the next 10 years look like. And to honestly, a couple of years ago, I got quite nervous about, hang on, Pierre, look at what's going on. Everybody's selling things a different way, and your business is proper old school. So that's why the silver bullet thing came along, because if somebody hadn't got a product that we needed, we had to develop our own. I know other people will do the same going forward. But trying to master that was an urgent, important action. It's just become even more urgent. So even simple things like, we knew that I understand what the point of having the software product would be, but the way we looked at it is if the consumer does more of the journey themselves, it actually costs you less money, of course. So, but actually, we hadn't quite mastered, if a customer wanted to ask a question, but they're using the software product, well, how are they going to ask the question? And so now what we've done is we've introduced Zoom calls. We can now take over the consumer's screen. We can now complete the transaction with the customer through Zoom and Silver Bullet. They can then get the order form printed, which the guys are sorting out for us for next month. We can then change the deal by taking the customer offline into a separate part. And so we've just got far more excited about the potential of an online sales tool, which you can both share over something like Zoom. And so it was good, but I think the development of the next 2 or 3 weeks of that software product and what we've learned about dealing with guests online has come on leaps and bounds. So we always had a vision of changing our sales process into 3 particular pods: 1 pod for e-commerce, 1 pod of people for attention, 1 pod of people for showroom visits. And they're quite independent KPIs, independent targets, independent shifts and pay schemes. So that was always the plan to roll it out this year. We just didn't get it all rolled out by the time we hit this. We only had rolled out in 1 of the branches. So now we're speeding up all the rollout of that new sales process, new sales structure. But I think what we'd written up about selling e-commerce has gone massively matured. So, because all our showroom systems that we use, and I'm sure it's the same for lots of groups, you couldn't continue the sales process online because it was an analog sales process rather than a digital one. So you ended up saying to the guest, well, would you mind if I rang you? Are you free in 10 minutes? I'll do this and I'll come back to you. And so when e-commerce is all about convenience and really speed through a process online, coming on and offline to say, can I value your car? And do you mind if I do see it now and I send you? It's all a bit crap. Because every time you drop off, as we know, off the web or drop off a conversation, the likelihood of re-engaging is much less. So if you want to do e-commerce, you've got to keep the consumer online. That's why the Silver Bullet product is so important. And some of the developments that they're doing is so important. And your sales process has to be bob on because it's all about speed and continuity of conversation. So I think the whole learning around how to sell the car online and what software needs to do and what the individual needs to do has just gone forward like 3 years. And so obviously we bought transport, so we set up a transport division. So the click and collect things obviously we'll do it in-house now. We've got separate e-commerce teams who learn the separate KPIs. So all the businesses I've been around today, I've met all the dedicated e-commerce teams with separate targets, everything. It's really quite inspiring. So that bit has worked. I think we're going to do, some of the guys, some groups out there were ahead of us in certain aspects. I think hopefully we'll caught up and find our own place in the new sales process inquiry management world.
And what's demand been like now the showrooms are back open, Peter? In England, we've reported on booming used car sales today in a number of dealerships. Some reporting they're selling 5-to-1 used cars to new. What are you seeing? I know it's very early, but what have you seen so far this week?
Well, we were paranoid about not selling enough new cars because that was, if I looked at the trend in England versus what we need to achieve, we then switched some of our spend into new rather than used because no used car prices are going up, so I know we'll have to pay more for a used car. Our used car stock was great actually, but I was worrying about it diminishing and then going back in the market and buying used cars at higher values. The margin might be less, so we decided we would focus hugely on new cars when we came back to try and create our own part exchanges. So I think yesterday we sold 160 used cars, 40 of them were new. So that's about where we would have hoped it would have been. So that's slightly better on new, but we needed to have, so depending on the franchise, is their new car stock allocation between now and the end of the year. But that we were quite pleased with that. So new car sales were slightly higher. Used cars was pretty amazing. Our average daily sales is about 90, 95 to 160 was all right. I've not checked today's scores, but we were tracking quite similar on Tuesday, which is quite good. Yeah, I think that's all right actually.
What sort of stuff is selling, Peter?
Well, through the lockdown, our most successful business was Porsche. So we had one sales advisor sell 100 Porsches in 3 months himself. which to honestly I didn't think would happen. I think that's incredible. So they had a good time. Our car supermarkets had a good time because they obviously had a lot of used car stock, so that worked well. Land Rover did quite well for us. BMW did quite well for us. Vauxhall News was a bit quiet. But I think we came up with quite aggressive campaigns. We changed our price point. You know, what we try to find is you could reduce the price point too much on the cars through lockdown, which we were worried about doing too much, and then you're just being busy fools. We actually found a good price point, which we're happy with. It was about 2 or 3% cheaper than everybody else. So that's for us about 300 quid cheaper on most volume cars, you know, towards about 600 quid as you go up the price chain. And we kind of leveled that out and stuck with it. And then we were spending on auto trade heavily when obviously people weren't on lead gen. So we just went at it quite heavily on marketing. But our cost per inquiry was so low, cost per deal was so low that it didn't matter that our margins were slightly less because of the price. So I think we got that quite good, and we were buying a lot of cars through the lockdown when I think everybody wasn't. So we were quite fortunate that I think we were the place to come if somebody really needed to get some cash. They rang us up, and we did a better deal than normal, but we still gave the people cash back that they wanted. So it was kind of fair, but we ended up buying. So we're working through a lot of the cars that we bought with really good margin, actually. And funny enough, through the lockdown, F&I finance pen was higher through e-commerce selling than it is face-to-face. So we were quite surprised with that. Add-on sales, maybe not so much, but finance sales are pretty good. And we're seeing a real upturn in finance inquiries when you're advertising about getting people finance. That is generating quite a lot of inquiries, as well as people are probably not looking at public transport, needing to get finance for a car that they've not owned for a while. So we're seeing finance inquiries at the lower end of the price point be very high. So finance at the bottom end, premium stuff at the top end is doing really, really well. Used cars is clearly good. And new cars, we're fighting hard to make sure that we get the inquiries that we need to, because that's where we're putting the extra focus.
I mean, I'm amazed at that 100 car salesmen that you've got for Porsche. I mean, that really is an amazing achievement during lockdown.
Yeah, I think we saw some of the best sales performances we've ever achieved in the 14 years through the period, versus against the odds. I think we had guys that have run dealerships for me and my dad for a long time, coming in and washing cars to make sure the delivery went out, being the valeter, and I just saw an incredible culture. The kind of the things you hope to see in a family business when you're up against it. Dad and I were, sent a message to everybody out there. We were doing, Anna and I, my wife, were doing videos to colleagues on Sunday to make sure people were all right. We set up a prayer line. We set up a well-being hub if anybody's having tough times, about mental health issues. If anybody had any of those, we had people online to deal with those. Anybody had kids through the period, we sent a week's worth of food, because, so they could just cook the food in the house and a few people that had kids. So that worked out well for newborn babies. So there's a lot of things we put in to make sure that if this is a family business and we generally say we care about the colleagues, now's the time to show it. And I think that's gone down quite well, because people have seen what we said is authentic. So for us, redundancies would kill our culture. We've worked so hard to get so many good people that I don't want to do redundancy short term to then say, oh, I'll recruit people again in the future. That won't work for us. Instead, what we're trying to say to people, and it might go wrong, I don't know what the right answer is on all this, none of us do, but if everybody just tightens their belt a little bit, then we can keep everybody in a job. And I'm amazed how supportive the colleagues have been about that, because that was not easy for a lot of people to do, but everybody's said, right, well, I'll take a wee bit less money if it means that everybody can keep in a job. And I think that's what family business is supposed to do. I'm hoping that is a success story of this for us. I'm really pinning my hopes that. I don't know if it'll work, but we're all trying hard to make sure that is the plan and it works going forward. And we've committed to the colleagues that we'll just find a way to sell more stuff. We're not planning redundancies. It's not anywhere near the agenda. We're talking about extra turnover, better margin, better cost control in other areas. And if dealerships do close and staff levels go somewhere else, my team will be in a good mood. We'll be fired up. So for customers coming into my business, where my guys are not getting made redundant, I'm expecting our customer experience to be out of this world. And then they might go to another business which is down in the dumps because people are not sure what they're doing. I need to play to our strengths. That atmosphere might help us sell the extra car. And so I've got to keep my team up for it and on it, and I think we'll have a good time.
Peter, when we last spoke, you were in the midst of getting your businesses ready for the reopening and putting in place lots of changes. One of the ones you talked about was temperature checks. Has that continued? And have you had to make any other changes since we last spoke to get your business ready to open?
I'll take and show you. Hang on 2 seconds. I'll show you the temperature check. You can still see me. I'll take you to
We can.
walk you past a couple of Porsche superstars. You might be on camera. Wave, guys, wave. Yeah, busy selling Porsches in the show. Right, so this is our camera check. So we do. I don't know if you can see that. Can you?
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
So what we're doing then obviously tells you on the camera what the temperature would be on the camera. So you can't actually get into the business unless you have unless you've been on the. Can you still see that? Yeah. Unless you've been on the temperature check. Then I think we've done the same as everybody else with the layout. But I've been in 4 of the businesses today, and everybody likes the temperature checks. So we had nobody saying, I don't think the ones I've been in, nobody's had a temperature, so everyone's got in. But the colleagues like it because it makes us feel as if it's a safe place to work, and the customers like it because we say, well, nobody else in this business has got a temperature at the moment. And what the stats are that we had about from the camera people was that that's a 90% chance it'll catch somebody who has got a virus of some kind because of the temperature check. So that's the plan. So each one of them cost about £3,500, so it wasn't cheap. But in terms of confidence given the colleagues and confidence to give the guests, I think it would be the right thing to do. Because the handheld ones don't work because you end up getting too close to the guest. So you break the rules by doing a handheld temperature thing. So that doesn't work anyway. And then it wasn't accurate enough. We tested them and they weren't accurate enough. We told me I had my temperature 24 degrees. Well, that was technically, I was out for the count. So I don't, and you got the stereotype of a guest comes into the showroom and you hold a temperature check up to their forehead. It looks as if you're going to shoot them. So you got the stereotypical bandit of a used car salesman. So I thought that looks all wrong. So investing in that, I think, shows that we're genuinely interested in the colleague and the guest, and it's common sense. So we did it.
And was that taken we saw in the showroom there, in the background?
Yeah, they're amazing, by the way. Wow. I've never driven anything so fast in my life. So a lot of interest. Actually, it's been funny. I've had an awful lot more people more interested in hybrid or electric vehicles through the pandemic. I don't know whether people have been reading up on it or there's more just generally more cars out. But there seems to be a bit more demand for alternative fuel vehicles as people maybe reflected on the circumstances of being in. So, but obviously that car is someone else. So there's no problem with interest on that.
And finally, Peter, what are your hopes for the rest of this year? I mean, it's clearly going to be quite difficult. But I mean, what are you hoping for your business?
Well, in the 3 months we had up here, obviously we had a range of things happening, and some of the things happening were planning new departments starting, restructuring some departments. Maybe knowing that this year wouldn't be that profitable, but we would use the time effectively for the future of the organisation. So I'm expecting a lot of things to be set up and organised that might help the company in the future. We have planned a profitable second half of the year because actually at the end of June, the company still made money. So I don't think there's any exceptions in that as well. That's pure trading. So come the end of June, the motor group will be in a profitable position, which I think is pretty incredible. So I'm really proud of the guys for doing that. And then the second half of the year, we're assuming the same profitability as we had in the original business plan. So you never know. I mean, the news about Leicester is not good news, is it? About them closing down, so you don't know what's going to come. But the only way I can guarantee people to have a job in this organisation longer term is if I make it profitable. So we have to talk about turnover, margin, cost control all the time. We've got to get every colleague interested in that. Get through the year, second half of the year with the same profits we imagined at the beginning, but then have also put in place some of the changes that we planned through the lockdown, so next year's even better. But, I'm not going to say anything daft that we're planning acquisitions and all that, because you really don't know what's coming on. But we're trying to get ourselves in a positive mindset. We're in financially a strong position. So, a lot of it is a mindset issue. We're trying to be in the right position at the right time. So if we do want to grow the company, if we do want to grow turnover in our existing businesses, if we do want to try and find opportunities or restructure a corporate department or roll out a better body shop process, that we're trying to find opportunities about, again, making the company better whilst looking after the colleagues and the guests and still doing the foundation work in the community. So more of the same, but I think probably a bit more turbocharged to make a real difference and make sure that we don't waste a crisis.
Peter, as always, it's been absolutely fantastic to chat to you. Thank you for giving up your time at the end of the day to share your time with Car Dealer Magazine. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Nice one. Thanks ever so much. So if you like more Car Dealer Lives like this one, you can log on to cardealermagazine.co.uk. Just click on the live tab at the top of the page and you'll find lots of interviews like the one that Peter has just given us. Thanks ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.